Crowds would scream when that final stretch kicked in because they knew what was coming. 10 minutes of pure guitar fire. Some guitar solos don't just last a few bars, they take you on a journey, stretching minutes into eternity. Let's dive into the 10 longest rock guitar solos in history. Back in 1969, when Led Zeppelin first started stretching Dazed and Confused on stage, fans had no idea what they were in for. What began as a 6-minute track on the debut album turned into a sprawling, unpredictable epic. By the early 70s, Jimmy Page was pushing this song past 20 minutes, sometimes even 30. The magic wasn't just in the length, but in the experimentation. Page pulled out a violin bow, dragging it across his Les Paul to create eerie, otherworldly sounds. Then he'd unleash riff after riff, building tension until the whole band exploded into a thunderous groove. As a listener, you never knew where the solo would take you. Dark, psychedelic whispers one moment, and then a furious storm the next. Live, Dazed and Confused wasn't just a song, it was a voyage through Zeppelin's wildest impulses. When Lynyrd Skynyrd released Freebird in 1973, nobody could have guessed that its solo would become one of the longest and most famous in rock history. On the album cut, it runs nearly 5 minutes, but on stage, it transformed into a monster. I still remember the first time I heard a live recording. The solo just kept climbing and climbing until it felt like it might never end. It begins almost tender, then Alan Collins and Gary Rossington's twin guitars push harder, the tempo rising, each phrase sharper than the last. By the time they hit full stride, the solo has turned into a southern rock hurricane. Crowds would scream when that final stretch kicked in because they knew what was coming. 10 minutes of pure guitar fire. In the 1970s, this wasn't just a song, it was an anthem carved in solos. By the time Pink Floyd released To the Wall in 1979, fans were already expecting something monumental, but nobody could have predicted the emotional weight of David Gilmour's solos on Comfortably Numb. On the record, there are two, already unforgettable. Yet live, especially during the 1994 Pulse Tour, they stretched into soaring journeys that could last 9 minutes or more. What makes them so powerful isn't just length, it's tone. Gilmour bends notes that seem to cry, then lets them hang in the air as if the guitar itself is breathing. He doesn't shred for speed, he makes every note feel like it matters. When you hear that final solo live, with the band swelling behind him, it feels like time stops. For me, it's one of those moments where the guitar doesn't just play music, it speaks straight to the soul. In 1971, the Allman Brothers Band recorded their legendary Live at Fillmore East album, and it gave us one of the longest, most electrifying solos in rock. Their version of Whipping Post stretched to a jaw-dropping 23 minutes, and it wasn't just filler. It was a masterclass in improvisation. Duane Allman and Dickie Betts took turns weaving in and out, trading fiery licks and soulful lines. One moment, the guitars cried with bluesy desperation. The next, they roared with hard rock intensity. The rhythm section held it all together, giving the soloist the freedom to explore. Hearing it, you almost forget you're listening to a single song. It feels like an odyssey. I remember the first time I played that Fillmore version. I sat there stunned, unable to believe a solo could keep evolving for so long and still feel so alive. When Neil Young released Cortez the Killer in 1975 on the Zuma album, it was already clear he wasn't interested in radio-friendly guitar breaks. This was a song built around space, mood, and raw emotion, and the solos became its heartbeat. Young's guitar tone was ragged, almost fragile, but that's what made it so powerful. Live, he would stretch Cortez into 10 or 15 minutes, letting every phrase breathe. Sometimes a single note would hang in the air like a question before he answered it with a burst of distortion or a mournful cry. I've always loved how unpolished it sounds, like he's digging the notes straight out of his soul. It isn't about speed or precision, it's about honesty. And when the solo winds down, you feel like you've been taken somewhere only Neil Young's guitar could lead. In the late 1960s, the Grateful Dead were already known for pushing boundaries, but Dark Star became their ultimate canvas for improvisation. On stage, Jerry Garcia would stretch the song into 20 minutes, sometimes even longer, guiding the band into unexplored territory. Night after night. Garcia's solos weren't about showing off speed, they were about painting soundscapes. 1 minute, his guitar would sparkle with delicate psychedelic runs. The next, it would dive into swirling feedback, carrying the entire crowd with him. The rest of the Dead followed instinctively, making every performance unique. Fans never heard the same Dark Star twice. I remember listening to a 1972 version where Garcia's solo felt like it bent time itself. 20 minutes gone in a flash. For Deadheads, this wasn't just a jam. It was a journey through the unknown, guided by Garcia's fearless guitar. When Cream released Wheels of Fire in 1968, fans discovered just how far Eric Clapton could take a blues standard. Their live version of Willie Dixon's Spoonful, recorded at the Fillmore, stretched to over 16 minutes, and it's a full-blown guitar workout. Clapton doesn't rush. He digs into the blues with long bending notes, then suddenly unleashes fiery runs that cut straight through Ginger Baker's pounding drums and Jack Bruce's thundering bass. The trio sound like they're in a battle and a conversation at the same time, each pushing the other higher. For me, this solo captures the moment Clapton truly earned his Clapton is God graffiti. It's not just technical brilliance, but it's passion, grit, and the sense that anything could happen. 16 minutes may sound long, but when you're lost in it, time just disappears. By 1982, Dire Straits had already proven themselves masters of storytelling, but Telegraph Road was something else entirely. On the album Love Over Gold, it ran over 14 minutes, and live, Mark Knopfler's solos turned it into a spellbinding journey. Knopfler's style was unique. No pick, just his fingers pulling shimmering notes out of his Les Paul Standard replica with an intimacy few guitarists could match. The solo rises and falls like the story itself, moving from quiet reflection to sweeping crescendos that feel like they could level a stadium. The first time I heard it live, I was struck by how personal it felt. Knopfler wasn't just playing, he was narrating through his guitar. Every phrase seemed chosen to draw you deeper in. By the end, you realize you haven't just heard a solo, you've lived through a whole landscape of sound. On New Year's Day, 1970, Jimi Hendrix stepped onto the stage at the Fillmore East with the band of gypsies and unleashed machine gun. What followed was 12 minutes of guitar that felt like a war cry. Hendrix bent notes into the sound of helicopters, mimicked gunfire with bursts of feedback, and poured the chaos of Vietnam straight through his Stratocaster. It wasn't just a solo, it was a battlefield painted in sound. One moment, his guitar screamed with rage, the next, it wept with sorrow. Listening today, you can still feel that mix of fury and heartbreak, like history itself echoing through the amps. I'll never forget the first time I heard it. It felt dangerous, like the guitar wasn't just being played, but weaponized. Machine Gun wasn't entertainment. It was Hendrix showing the world what pain and power really sound like. By 1975, Frank Zappa had already proven himself as one of rock's most daring composers, but Inca Rhodes pushed boundaries even further. On the studio album One Size Fits All, the solo already stretched out, but live it became a centerpiece, often running past 10 minutes. Zappa's style was unlike anyone else. He mixed rock firepower with jazz fusion complexity, creating solos that felt both chaotic and meticulously structured. One phrase might sound playful, the next brutally sharp, and suddenly he'd slip into melodies that seemed almost classical. I remember hearing a live version where Zappa just kept spiraling outward, exploring every corner of the fretboard. It wasn't just technical wizardry, it was storytelling, filtered through a mind that refused to stay inside the lines. Inca Rhodes wasn't made for radio, it was made for the brave, for those ready to follow wherever Zappa's guitar decided to wander. From Hendrix's battle cries to Gilmour's timeless bends, these solos proved one thing. Sometimes the guitar says more the longer you let it speak. Which one hit you hardest? Drop your favorite in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more epic rock stories.